Jonathan Reinforce Larson is a name any Western follower of Overwatch's esports scene will be able to recognize. And whilst the newest fans will know him primarily for his work on the analyst desk during Contenders S1, he is also one of the most successful players in the game's short history. Starting in the early betas, he made a name for himself with a multitude of teams to eventually become the main tank for the French-Swedish squad of Rogue. The team spent months as the best in the world and remains arguably the most successful Western lineup of 6, particularly when it comes to offline performances. Following a close defeat at the hands of Envias in Apex S1, him and D.Va left the team to form a new, this time all-Swedish, team under the banner of Misfits. Even though the squad was one of the best in Europe, it failed to live up to expectation of both fans and the players themselves. Eventually Reinforce and the team parted ways, which led to him joining the Contenders S1 broadcast as an analyst. Last week, we had the opportunity to ask him a slew of questions in regards to his career as a gamer, as well as his background and future in journalism and broadcast work. If you missed the first part of the interview, you can catch it here. In it, Reinforce talks about getting into esports, Overwatch, his time on Rogue and more. Looking back on your time with Misfits, do you think that you got to play your signature style while you were on the team? It's weird, because in both Misfits and Rogue, I've always been the aggressive tank, but most of the time, while in the teams themselves, I've argued against it, for a more defensive and positional approach. So, looking back at Misfits, I never wanted to play the 3 DPS compositions in Contenders Season 0. Instead, I wanted to play more passive and utilize the D.Va defense matrix to abuse enemy mistakes. I was the guy who wanted to jump for high ground leading into a fight to give me the option to engage more safely, but I was always encouraged to dive deeper. Looking back, I could have obviously done better, but I don't really feel like my Winston play has represented how I'd like to play it, and in many ways my death statistics suffered because of that. It was really only during Apex Season 2, with my Reinhardt, that I felt I was really on point because I got to play my game, how I wanted to. I think that was the reason Timu mentioned my name when talking best Reinhardt players during that famous stream where he called out wins. But even then, we went into Takeover 2 playing some awful triple tank after a player within Misfits really pushed for us to move into playing more triple tank despite us winning pretty consistently in practice against all other European teams just playing 2/2/2 compositions, sometimes with Reinhardt and Manhattan on the Zarya. At that point we were losing only to E-United on a pretty regular basis. I kept a WL sheet against all teams on all maps at the time, perhaps a little more practice time to tone down my ingrained aggression ahead of Sydney in the World Cup, where we always played Manhattan on D.Va, and I would have felt 100% confident in what we did and how I got to play Winston the way I desired to. That was one of the reasons that during the Ultimate Advantage podcast I said I really didn't feel like I had done myself justice so far in my playing career, because I knew I had a lot more in me that I didn't get to showcase because of my previous teams opting for something I wasn't 100% comfortable with ahead of most tournaments. When Misfits dropped Zave, you mentioned in the statement that you needed someone with stronger leadership and communication. However, I found it a bit weird as the perception, or my perception anyway, is that you, Zebasai and D.Va are quite vocal already. Can you explain into a bit more detail what exactly were the problems in that iteration of the team? You know, this is an interesting one, and since being removed from the starting roster, and kicked from the World Cup team, the what if and regret that has caused me the most emotional pain and anger. When I played in Misfits, yes, Zebasai and D.Va were notoriously those leaders, especially outside of the game. They never took on those roles within the game itself though, and it fucked up our entire in-game communication looking back at it. When Zebasai was on the flex tank role early in Misfits, he was quite vocal about things, in a tank meta anyway, and I appreciated that, but as we moved him towards a flex support role, he quieted down and didn't take the shot-calling role people know him for. Similar to D.Va, where in Rogue, D.Va was this god Genji I loved playing with, and I saw him as my brother in arms for a very long time, but as he moved to a Tracer role, he also quieted down. He was the one flanking, so, obviously, he wasn't to shot-call engages or team fights, he was just there to do work. And so we were caught in this phase.